Okay, this is a shir on Likutei Sichos, book number 23, the Sicha on the portion of Shlach, the third Sicha. Today's shir is sponsored by Achikam in loving memory of his mother. What's the name? Alice Bat Rivka. Okay, let's jump right in. This is going to be a journey through the challenges that the Bnei Yisrael posed to Hashem, the tests that they made to Hashem in the desert. So Pasuk says, this is talking after the Bnei Yisrael sinned with the sin of the spies. So the spies, the 10 people, 12 spies, came back. Only 2 of them gave good reports. 10 of them said not good things. And so Hashem says, and the Jewish people fall for it. They say hook, line, and sinker. They cry. They don't want to go to Israel. And Hashem is not very pleased with that. It says that Vayinasuoti, they tested me, they challenged me these 10 times. How can I take them into Israel? This generation is not going to go into Israel. Their kids will go into Israel. We're going to hone in on these 10 times. Our sages tell us. Our sages learn from this. We know it from Pirkei Avot, right? I think it's our Father's chapter 5. There are a number of things that figure to the number 10. The 10 utterances, Asara Ma'amarot, the 10 utterances that Hashem created the world in. We have the 10 miracles that happened when the Jewish people left Egypt. And we have the 10 tests, Nisyonot, the 10 challenges that the Bnei Yisrael challenged Moshe and Hashem in the desert. So when we want to calculate this number of 10, there are various opinions. Very interesting here, thank you. I'm going to mention here that, interestingly, sometimes in the Torah, we start up with a number, and then we have to figure out how the number, what's included in that number. One of the prime examples is the 613 mitzvahs. We know there's 613 mitzvahs. How to get to that number exactly are various opinions. Which mitzvahs are counted as part of those 613? An interesting phenomenon here, when Hashem says they challenged me 10 times, there's also a debate within the sages, within the sources of our sages, which are the 10 sins. Now you can open up the Chumash, like we did earlier today, and go and try and find the 10 sins, but we'll find there's more than 10, and we have to know which ones are counted in this count. So let's first jump into the Gemara in Erkin. The Talmud tractate Erkin says, Shnayim Bayam, there were 2 in the sea, and there were 2 about water, there were 2 about man, and 2 incidences where they made Hashem angry about the meat, the bird meat, the quail meat, once at the golden calf, where they angered Hashem, and once in the desert of Paran, which is a story here. So the desert of Paran is where the Meraglim were sent from. So the Gemara then explains that what 2 sins were there at the sea. One, when they were down to the sea, before going, when they were freed from Egypt, they reached the sea and they said to Hashem, were there not enough graves in Egypt that you had to bring us here to kill us at the sea? Then Hashem split the sea. And then when they came up from the sea, there's another sin. What did they say? They were skeptical. They said, Hashem split the sea and we came out. But they said, Kishem shanu ali mitzad zeh. The same way we are coming up from this side, kach Mitzrayim ali mitzad acher. Similarly, the Egyptians are coming from the other side. Just because we came out and were saved, who said our captors, the Egyptians, weren't saved? Again, a skepticism. That's a sin. Then there were another 2 about water. One right when they went out of Egypt, in a place called Mara, bitter, where the waters were bitter, and Hashem told Moshe to throw a bitter stick into the water, and the waters became sweet. Once in Refidim, they came to a place of Refidim, they said there's no water, and Hashem told Moshe to hit the rock this time, the beginning of the 40 years. And Moshe hit the rock, the water came out, but there they also had complained. How are we going to live? We don't have water, we need water. So that's 2 about water. 2 about the man. Hashem brought them down this food from heaven, this miraculous food from heaven. And what happens? He tells them 2 things. Don't go out on Shabbos, collect man, and don't leave anything over for tomorrow. Show your trust in Hashem. Hashem will give you new pizza Hashem will give you new manna every day. Right? So, and they didn't. They went out on Shabbos and they tried to leave over. So those are the two ways they made Hashem. They tested it, challenged Hashem about man. Shnayim B'Slav, the two about the quails. There's the first story where they say we want meat. They say we want food, we want bread and meat. Bread Hashem gives them in a nice way. He gives them the manna. Meat, He brings them the quails that come. All they have to do is gather up the quails until they get sick of it. But they have quails. But there's two stories of meat. One is in the Parsha B'Shalach, and the second one in the portion of Bahaloischa, where also they say they ask for meat. Moshe says, "What am I going to do? How am I going to bring them meat?" Hashem says, "Don't worry, get 70 people, the elders, and we're gonna organize meat for them." So that complaint about meat, even though they had what to eat, they had man that was satiating for them, it was nutritious, they wanted to taste. Nonetheless, they complained they wanted meat. So that's a second meat complaint. And then we have the egel, the golden calf. We have the midbar part of the story of the Meraglim. So that's the way the Gemara says it in Masechta Erkin. There's another source, there's the Pirkei Avot, which is the Ethics of Our Fathers, which is 5 chapters. There's another Ethics of Our Fathers called Avot de Rabbi Natan, the teachings from our fathers taught by Rabbi Natan, also Mishnaic, but it's much more elaborate than the 4 chapters of Pirkei Avot. And there we can find many other details. What has just been pointed out in a point-like fashion in Pirkei Avos, we find more spelled out in Avos de Rabbi Natan. So in the Avos that were taught by Rabbi Natan, it's in the back of the Gemara. It's not considered an actual tractate of Mishnah. It didn't make it into the Mishnah, so to speak, like a collection of Braitot. So in the Avos of Rabbi Natan, it says that the 10 tests, what were they? It reads it a little differently. It says, first of all, the golden calf. And then when they were asking for water in a place called Refidim, right before Moshe hit the rock as instructed. We know there's 2 hitting the rocks. One wasn't supposed to. We're talking about the first one we was supposed to. And then there's so let's count here. Golden calf, the water in Refidim, where Moshe hits the rock, the Yamsuf, the sea where they complain to Hashem, and it doesn't say that these are 2. Again, the water has been counted as 1. We said there's 2 cases of water, right? The sea, we said when they went down and went up. Now the Avos Rav Nosson just counting that as 1. So we're up to 3. Tafla Laman, the Meraglim, the story of the spies, that's 4. Tafla Laman, they complained about the man, that's 5. Machlekes HaShakach, the Korach argument. Slav, when they complained about the birds, they were going to meet and they got birds. And then 3 tests, which are Taveira. What? Only 1 Slav. We've only counted the sea once, the water once, the Slav once. But now there's another 3 that we didn't talk about. Or in our count. We had Taveira. Taveira is where it says that the people ran away from the hill of Hashem. Vayisru mehar Hashem. You remember last week there was some cryptic statements. There's one statement that says that they ran away from the mountain of Hashem. And that's considered to be a form of running away from Hashem. They were trying to escape the instructions.
They built from
Taveira, yeah. Hashem punished them. He made Then you had Masa. What happened in Masa? Taveira over Masa. Oh, 1 second. We're going to spell it out here. Sorry. So we have Taveira, Masa, Kibras Tava. Let's spell it out here in the parentheses. Taveira was the Misainanim, sorry, not the running away from the house from the mountain of Hashem, is where it says the people were complaining. It doesn't say what they were complaining about. It says Mitonanim. Then we have the Masa. Masa is the man, when they complained about the man for the second time. No, sorry, this is the first time they complained about the man. Yeah, when they went and collected the man. And then we have Kivra Tatava, the second birds. So we do bring in the second birds. We bring in, but we added here, what did we add that we don't have in ours? Korach and the story of the Misainanim, story of them complaining. So according to that second opinion, obviously Rabbi Nosson, you have the sin of the complainers, and you have the sin of Korach, and you have the second complaint about the man. When Pirkei Avos and when the Gemara in Erkin speaks about man, it's not speaking about the complaint of man. It speaks about The three that the Gemara in Erkin mentions, which are different than the others, the Rabbi Nosson, are these. In Gemara in Erkin speaks about the first complaint of water with the bitter, where it was transformed from bitter to sweet. One of the sea complaints, either when they went down or when they came up. Obviously, Rabbi Nosson counts sea as one. Erkin, Gemara counts it as two. And one of the complaints about man, where we brought two challenges about man, which is leaving over and collecting on Shabbos. Obviously, Rabbi Nosson has a complaint about man, but the challenge of man, it only brings one. Okay, now we have yet a third way of counting these 10 challenges. Number 3, we have the Rambam in his Pirush HaMishnayos, in his explanation on the Mishnayos. He counts the 10 sins as follows. I'm calling them 10 sins. You'll see that the Rebbe clarifies it's not 10 sins. We're not counting sins, we're counting challenges. But I'll let the Rebbe explain it in his own, at the pace of the sea. The Rambam says like this: we have the Yam Suf, we have the sea. It's counted as 1. We have Mara, the bitter water, 2. We have the request for manna, which till now we haven't mentioned this. In other words, they said we're hungry. Rambam counts that as a challenge to Hashem. We have another 2 by manna. When they complain they don't have what to eat, that's 1. And then the 2 instructions that they violate: not leave over and not to go out on Shabbos. Already up to 5. The water, the second time they ask for water in Refidim, when Moshe hits the rock. The story of the Egel, the story in Tav'era, which is when they complain, last week's Parsha Ba'alescha. The second case, Kivrei Satava, where they're buried because of their indulgence, that's the second case of quail. The first case of quail is not even mentioned. And the sin of the Meraglim. We have 10. So according to this opinion, what's the difference between the Rambam and the Gemara in Erchin? We have the Mesoinim, the complainers, that's added. And also what's added is that the Jews asked for the man. That's considered one of the challenges to Hashem. They said, we're hungry, we're starving, give us something. And then he gave them man. But instead of that, what the Rambam leaves out is one of the 2 complaints at the sea, either by going down or by coming up, and one of the slubs, the first slub. The Rambam doesn't include Korach. No, we're soon going to deal with that. The Rambam does not include Korach. Only Avos to Rabbi Nosson brings Korach. The Gemara in Erkin also doesn't bring Korach. We'll soon see why. Base, paragraph 2. Rashi. Of course, there's Rashi, paragraph 2. Rashi, when he comments on the Torah, what does Rashi say in his commentary on the Torah? He says that they challenged me 10 times, says Hashem. Rashi says something a little bit cryptic. He says, he counts 6. So he says 2 at the sea, 2 at the manna, 2 with the quail, with the birds, etc., as the Gemara in Erkin spells out. In other words, I'm following the way that the Gemara, the tractate Erkin, counts, but he doesn't. He mentions the first 3 sets, first 6. He says, go look in the Gemara Erkin. That's the way I'm counting. So we have to understand why. So let's understand, first of all, why Rashi takes that approach and doesn't take, for example, the approach of Avis to Rabbi Nosson. He says the reason he doesn't take the approach of Avis to Rabbi Nosson is because the Korach story is after the spies. The complaint about man, the second time, complaint about man, that we can't stand the man, was after the spies. But the pasuk is saying, at the story of the spies, Hashem saying, you've challenged me 10 times. So we can't count things that they only did wrong after that. It means the spies was the 10th incident, right? So we have to understand, though, okay, so we understand why Rashi, how the Avis to Rabbi Nosson does take it as the last 2. That's a different issue. And we can figure that out. But Rashi is going to stick to Pshat. So Rashi cannot learn that Korach is part of that, because Korach happens afterwards. Egel. Rashi will include Egel. The Gemara in Erkin, Rashi just lists 6, but the Gemara in Erkin, go back to the beginning, the first list we gave in the tractate Erkin, one is the golden calf, of course. Yeah. Now another thing, the fact that Rashi, but what we do have to understand is, why does Rashi not learn like the Rambam? In other words, the Rambam learned, the Rambam had 10, he didn't count Korach, and everything was before the story of the spies, but he counted it a little different. What did he count different? He has only one at the sea, but he does count the mitoninim, the complainers. He counts the second story of the Slav, right? Why doesn't Rashi count those? So Rabbi says like this: the fact that he doesn't count the complaint about the asking for the man. The Rambam also counted asking, saying we're hungry, we want food, and they got the manna. The Rambam considers that one complaint. The fact that Rashi doesn't want to learn like that is simple, because Rashi, in the simple reading of the pasuk, says, if you remember, pasuk says, Hashem says, "I'm going to give them bread in the morning." Rashi explained, they asked kehogen, bread they asked for appropriately. They need to eat. If you don't have bread, you come to your father and say, Father, I need sustenance. So they got it in a proper way. Hashem wasn't angry about that. He gave them the morning in a way of chiba, as Rashi says, in a way of endearment. The first time they asked for meat, even the first quail, they got it at night, in a night way. In other words, Hashem wasn't pleased. Don't ask for luxuries when you need basics. Basics, I understand. You ask for it, you get it. I appreciate. I'll give it to you in a loving way. What you ask for that's indulgent, I'll give it to you, but that's already a problem. So we understand why Rashi doesn't count the asking for man as an issue like the Rambam does. However, the question is, what about the sin of the complainers, which the Torah says, "Vayhi ha'am kemit onanim." The Torah speaks about it like a problem. It says the people were grumbling. Number two, why doesn't Rashi say the second? Rashi does bring the second complaint at the sea, but really it's not. If Rashi sticks to Pshat, the second complaint at the sea, when they say maybe the Egyptians came up on the second side, that's skepticism. Why is Rashi counting that as one of the sins instead of the mitonanim, which says explicitly that sin at the sea does not say explicitly? On the contrary, says the Rabbi here in the square brackets, in Parshas B'Shalach, Rashi says, why were they spit out on the sea? He says, so Hashem preempted the skepticism. Hashem said they shouldn't say, the Bnei Yisrael shouldn't say the same way we exited, the Egyptians exited. So from that we see that Rashi says that in the simple reading of the pasuk, they didn't complain because Hashem took away their complaint before they even complained. Why here is he saying, referring to this as a complaint? Now, since Rashi is telling us, Shutei shall make a simple reading of the pasuk, so what he should have done is count among these 10 the mitonanim, the complainers, which the pasuk says the people were mitonanim la Hashem, was bad in the ears of Hashem. Count that one, Rashi doesn't, and don't count the one about complaining when they go out of the sea. Maybe the Egyptians also went out, which the pasuk doesn't say. He should stick to the obvious challenges to Hashem that are written in the pasuk, and that would be like the Rambam. And then he doesn't have to. Then he wouldn't have to go and say, "Look in the Gemara Erchin, follow that list." He could just say, "Oh, let's follow the list of what's written explicitly," which the Rambam does. Another question: since Rashi counts 2 at the sea, it means that really we have a problem. Not just which ones do you count, but if you count all of them, if you have 2 at the sea, then you have 11 because you have still the mitonanim. You have the complainers. That's one challenging Hashem, which happens before the spies. At that stage, you have 11. So how can you not count one? In other words, it seems you have extra. It has to be 10. You can't just conveniently say, I'm not going to pay attention to one of them. How do you get to the number 10? Also, we have to understand, paragraph 3. We also have to understand in Ovis that Rabbi Nosson, he connects some of the 10 tests with a pasuk that later on we find in the beginning of the book of Devarim, Deuteronomy. What does Devarim start off? It says, these are the things that Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to the Bnei Yisrael in the desert. And what do we say? He was hinting at sins to tell them off. Moshe was about to pass away. The last speech of his life, he's telling them off. He's doing it in a hinted way. So in the desert, in the Arava, the gold. And there are some opinions, there are some, in Avos Rabbi Nosson, he brings some of those verses to support what are the 10 challenges that the Bnei Yisrael challenged Hashem. And that's how Rashi also learns, because when Rashi comments on the book in Devarim, he says, these are the things Moshe Rabbeinu spoke. He says he incorporated in here divrei tochachot, words of rebuke. And he says, Manakan kol hamakomot she'ichisu lifnei hamakom. He counted all the places that they made Hashem angered. And then Rashi counts the sins. He says, Bamidbar, what they made him upset in the desert, they said, we wish we would have died in the desert. We wish we would have died in Egypt. Why come to the desert? Ba'arava, they sinned with the sin of Baal Peor. Mol Suf, they sinned at the Yam Suf, at the going down to the sea. They made complaints about the man, which is white. And the Paran is the desert of Paran, which they sent out the spies. Chatzerot is where the argument of Korach was. The Zahav, a lot of gold, that's the golden calf. So according to this comes out that in the Pasuk in Devarim, we have different things counted than what is counted as the 10 things in the Gemara and Masechta Erkin. So we have to understand, why does Rashi not learn, like the opinion in the Sifri or the opinion in Avos Rabbi Nosson, that the rebukes of Moshe Rabbeinu were the same sins that Hashem here is rebuking them by saying, you've sinned against me 10 times. In other words, because Rabbi puts in a footnote here, even if there may be things after the spies, but why don't you also tell them off for everything they did till then? If there's 10 inclusive of the spies, why are they not mentioned, alluded to in Devarim, all of them? Okay, that's technical to keep track of all the 10 and which one comes in, which one goes out. I assure you that in the answer, we'll understand that there's a pattern that Rashi is trying to teach us, which has a very great bearing. By the time we finish, we'll have a very important implication for the way we view our own lives. Paragraph 4. In the Lashon and language of Rashi in our parsha itself, we have to understand. First of all, since Rashi is going to bring anyway the 10 challenges that the Jews challenged Hashem, I'm sorry, since he's not going to elucidate all the 10, he's going to say, you want to know what they are? Go look in the Gemara in Masechta Erkin. So why does he mention 6? Why doesn't he just say 2 at the sea, etc.? Go look in the Gemara Erkin. Furthermore, the language in the Gemara in Masechta Erkin is 2 at the sea, 2 at the water, 2 complaints about water, 2 complaints about man, 2 with quail. Rashi jumps over 2 at the water. He doesn't say that. He says etc. But then he says, but he does mention 2 quail. So let's see like this. Gemara Erkin says 2 at the sea. So we have sea, water, man, quail. What does Rashi do? He says sea. He misses out water. Misses out water. He jumps over water. Mana, quail, and etc. The etc. includes something that he mixed out. Usually etc. only includes things going forward. Why did he skip one out? And the etc. has to include things that he skipped over already. Unusual. The question is even more greater, and amazement is that the only one of these 10 that the Torah speaks about explicitly, and it uses the word menaseh, that the Jewish people challenged Hashem, is the 2 at the water. It says, what does it say by Refidim about the water? But it uses the lashon, uses language of menaseh. What is it? Vayavor Refidim Hashem says, "Maten nasun et Hashem." Moshe says, Mate nasunt Hashem, why are you testing God? Mate rivunim adi, why are you quarreling with me? The language there, nisayon, is used openly at the water. And Rashi doesn't, Rashi skips over the water and says, etc., includes it in the etc. Very, very strange. So paragraph 5, it would seem we'd be able to answer, at least the last questions we asked, that with quoting the Gemara in Masechta Erkin, Rashi is not, when he says go look in Erkin, he's not meaning to point out the other 4 that he hasn't mentioned. Mainly, he wants you to go and see what are the 6 that I did mention. In other words, when the 5-year-old learns about this, and it says, Hashem says, you've tested me, you've challenged me 10 times. He's going to find in the Chumash a bunch of different times when the Bnei Yisrael challenged Hashem. There's a bunch that says openly. So Rashi is just telling you the places where there could be an error, where the 5-year-old may not get what's going on. For example, he doesn't have to say the 2 that they challenged Hashem about water. The pasuk openly speaks about that. This 5-year-old remembers what he learned. He remembers there's a story when they came out of Egypt, they didn't have water, there was bitterness, and then Hashem turned it around for them. He remembers that even after that, they asked for water, and Hashem says, hit the rock. He doesn't have to mention those. However, when it comes to the sea, it only speaks about one challenge. Before they went down to the sea, it says, they complained, they said, why didn't we die in Egypt? So Rashi says, go and look. I'm telling you there were 2 at the sea. You want to know what they were? Go look at the Gemara. See, the Gemara says that there was another challenge at the sea. When they were saved, they said, the Egyptians are probably saved as well. Similarly, by the man, one would think that perhaps there's 3 sins with the man. Perhaps the fact that they even requested, they complained, they didn't have what to eat, and they got the man, maybe that's also a sin. So maybe there's 3. There's the fact that they requested man, there's the fact they left over, the fact they collected. So Rashi says, no. Go look in Masechta Erkin. I'm telling you, there's only 2 challenges that they challenged Hashem with manna. As the Gemara in Erkin says, that's only that they left over for the next day, and they went out on Shabbos to collect. Similarly, about the Slav, you could make a mistake, which Rashi is trying to mitigate and send you to the Gemara in Erkin. There are opinions that the 2 stories about the quail in portion of Beshalach, portion of Balaischa, are actually not 2 occurrences. They're the same occurrence. So therefore, the opinions, 46, the Rabbi doesn't quote here, the Rabbi quotes the book of Torah Shlema by Rabbi Menachem Kasher, who has an encyclopedic work on Midrashim and so on the Torah. There he quotes the opinions that say it's really 1 story. So Rashi doesn't want the 5-year-old to make a mistake. He says, the story, the complaints about the Slav, the quail was 2. Go look at Masechta Erkin just to make sure you know what they are. So we could say that. Says the Rebbe, it's however forced, it's a doichik, it's forced to say that. Because the same way, we're not sure whether the fact that they even asked for food and got manna, whether that's considered a test, a challenge to Hashem, because remember, bread is something imperative. So perhaps we're also not sure when they asked about drinking the bitter waters, maybe that's also not a problem. Maybe that's also not a challenge. Because water is a necessity. So, but Rashi doesn't mention 2 at the water. If we're saying that Rashi is mentioning the sins because the 5-year-old may have trouble understanding which ones are sins, he may have trouble understanding that they're asking for water was a sin because it's also imperative, necessity. Also, we may have a question, do you count the mitaonanim or not? Rashi doesn't bring the complainers. He brings 6, but he should spell them all out because we may not be sure which ones are in, which one are out. And Rashi, by quoting Erkin, clearly doesn't count the mitaonanim, the complainers. But why doesn't he spell that out clearly? Why does he just say 6 and then leave the rest to go in Erkin? Like either say them all or just say 1, etc., and send to the Gemara. So now we're going to have the thread of the explanation here, paragraph 6. We can explain the whole story here as something else. This explanation of Rashi is coming to another explanation he said just before that. On the pasuk Vayinasu. Vayinasu, what the word Vayinasu means, Rashi says, Kamashmoid, the way it sounds. The word Vayinasu is challenged. Right? But some Mefarshim say, for example, Gur Aryeh explains that why does Rashi, the word Vayinasu is not a foreign word. It's not like a foreign language that that's been inserted into the Torah. Why does Rashi have to comment on it? Now, Rashi has a one-word comment on the word Vayinasu. Kem mashma'o. The literal meaning of Vayinasu. Don't try and learn anything else into it. What would I learn into it? Says the Gurari, you may think the Vayinasu can mean they angered me 10 times. So Rashi says Vayinasu means that they challenged me. They tested me. They challenged me. They doubted me. Not that they angered me. Now, this is a big, big difference. Is it about a sin or is it about showing your doubt? Challenging Hashem. Well, can you do this? Being skeptical about Hashem's ability. Now we'll have an answer that will help us understand this whole thing. Why Rashi doesn't learn like the Rambam? Where the Rambam does, what was our issue? The Rambam took the pasuk of last week's parsha that the people were complaining. He says that's one of the 10. Rashi doesn't count it. You know why? Because according to the simple reading of the pasuk, there was no challenge there. They didn't say, oh, can Hashem do this? They just were complaining. They were looking. They were grumbling. They were murmuring discontentedly, looking, as Rashi says, alila, a libel, a reason. They were looking for an excuse to leave Hashem. Oh, I'm going to do this is lousy way of life, man. I'm going to go dance the night away in the bars. They were looking. They weren't challenging. Can Hashem do this? Let's look at the other things. You'll see they were challenging Hashem. So that's why Rashi doesn't take the Rambams, because he learns Vayinasu as being a challenge. He goes to the Gemara in Erchin, because those 10 incidences that are listed in the Gemara in Erchin have that same concept, are all included in the word Vayinasu, they tested me. Testing Hashem because of a lack, because of a weakness in faith. By the way, you may ask, therefore, what about this will tell us, the Rebbe says here in some footnotes like this. This will tell us why the story of Korach is not part of the 10, even though there is an opinion that Korach's story happened before the spies. There is an opinion that places it chronologically before the story of Meraglim. Generally, we don't accept it. But even according to that opinion, the story of Korach was also not a challenge. What did the story of Korach emanate from? Jealousy. They weren't challenging, can Hashem do something or not? They weren't doubting the ability of Hashem. That's not called Vayinasu. They were sinful. That was a sin, but it came from jealousy. The Cheta Egel, what about the sin of the golden calf? Why is that one of the challenges to Hashem? Isn't it just a sin? But where does let's think, where does the sin of the Egel come from? Because where does the sin of the Egel comes when there's a weakening of faith? They no longer believe that God has everything worked out. They look to create something for themselves. This is also the problem in the golden calf. It's not just the sin, but it's their doubting God. So it's part of the 10. It's part of the 10 places where they challenged Hashem. And this is also the reason why Rashi here has different things than he has in the rebuke of Devarim. Our pasuk, Vayinasu, the pasuk says, Hashem tells the Jewish people, I cannot take them into Egypt because they've challenged me 10 times. We're still going to say what's the nuance here. It's a very deep nuance, whether they sin or they challenge them. But in Devarim, where Moshe Rabbeinu tells them off, it's a rebuke about sinfulness against Hashem. Here, it's about them challenging Hashem. They're not all the same things. Why are we, for example, the sin of the Baal Peor. where they sin with the idolatry and with girls. The sin at the Yam Suf, where they himu. These are the things that these are the things that Moshe Rabbeinu tells them off, because they're very central sins, but they're not the kind of challenge that we're referring to here about the 10 challenges. So the ones Moshe Rabbeinu tells them off about is the sin of Baal Peor, the sin of the rebelliousness at the sea, the complaint about the man, right, where they get bitten with snakes later. Not about the leaving over for the man, but the complaining about the man. The sin of the spies, the sin of Korach, the sin of the golden calf. All these are central sins. That's what Moshe rebukes them for in Parshas Devarim. Here, Hashem is saying, I can't take you into Israel because you've challenged me 10 times. What does that mean? Let's take a look at paragraph 7. You have to still understand. It's true that in most of the places where it says the word vayinasu, it means challenge. But here, the pasuk clearly continues. It says, you've challenged me 10 times, and you didn't listen to my voice. In other words, they actually did not listen to the instruction of Hashem. So wouldn't it therefore be more appropriate to say that vayinasuoti is not they challenged me, but they angered me? Now, you will ask, isn't it the same thing? Challenging me automatically angers me. What's the difference? Challenge me, anger me. Rebbe says here in a brackets, no, challenging Hashem doesn't have to be connected with actually violating what he said. As we see, that some of the 10 tests, which the Gemara in Erechim says, the 10 challenges, were not in a way that they didn't listen to Hashem in the end. Let's try and see which one. Which ones didn't they listen to Hashem? First of all, about some of them are when they complained about they complained that maybe the Egyptians are going up from that side. It's not that they didn't listen to Hashem. They was already after the fact. They were already out. They were already out. They were skeptical. They were challenging Hashem. That they did. That they violated the word of Hashem. There they did both. They doubted and therefore they acted. But many of the ones are there were no actions that they did to anger him. They challenged him. They said, "Oh, you took us out of the." They doubted. They didn't trust. Exactly. That was a complaint. There was a challenge. They didn't do anything. No, but Moshe was saying it. Question about why Moshe said it, that's a different question. But the Jews were doubting Hashem, but they didn't do anything to violate the relationship. So it's not the same. Angering and challenging are two different things. Angering is where you actually violate. Like in the story where they went out to collect the money, they were both at the same time. So the explanation is like this. Why are we so important? Why is it so important for us to say that it's a challenge and not anger? Because it doesn't just have to do with the translation of the actual word vayinasu. What does it mean in this context? But Rashi's trying to shed light on the whole topic that's happening here. And Rashi sheds light on the nature of this particular juncture in Jewish history, where Hashem gets, so to speak, you could say exasperated or even angry. And Rashi wants to shed, by giving us the six challenges that he does mention, Rashi is trying to shed light, what is the issue here, and why does Hashem react the way he reacts? So we'll understand it like this. Paragraph 8. I must say, these are one of the sikhs that I was not so familiar with before. You know, there are many that there are many that are standard. This, I would guess, it's a very nuanced sikha till here, so many people would shy away from it if it wasn't part of the scheduled learning. That's one of the greatnesses of following a certain thing. You can't run away from it. You have to jump into it and get to it. But here there's a point that opens up new vistas. Paragraph 8. We'll understand by first asking a few more questions. We get the answers by asking questions. A few more questions this question. A, after Hashem told Moshe, I'm going to wipe them all out. That's it. I'm going to make a new people from you, right? What does Moshe Rabbeinu say? Moshe says, you know what the Egyptians are going to say? They're going to say, God has the power to take them out of Egypt, but he doesn't have the power to overcome us. The mighty 31 kings of Canaan. So Hashem says, no, I'm not. You're right. They're going to start doubting Hashem. So the question is like this. How can it be that besides the complaint, what will the Goyim say? The Goyim will say that Hashem doesn't have the power to bring the Jews into the land of Canaan. Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't find any other redemptive argument. He couldn't find anything good about the Jews. Like, look, they're good. They're not always so bad. They have some good stuff too. You got to knock them all out. Why does he go straight to this kind of? He doesn't bother saying the Jews are also good people. He just says, look, it's going to make you bad press. God is bad press. You don't want to do this. They're going to say you can't. Headlines. God has met his match in the 31 mighty kings of Canaan. God forbid. Number two. So why is that the only argument that works? Why does Moshe jump to that argument? Number two. Moshe asked, forgive the people. We say this pasuk on Yom Kippur. Please forgive the sinfulness of these people because of your great kindness. And you've borne these people all the way from Egypt till here. Don't just forgive them. What does Hashem say? You got it, Moshe. I have forgiven like you asked. But did he forgive like Moshe asked? Because if he did forgive, why didn't he bring them into Egypt, into Israel? He forgives, but then he makes them stay in the desert and die, and only the kids go. Where's the slicha? How does the slicha work? You know, if you wanted to have ice cream, and then your mother gets upset, she said, you didn't eat the main course, I gave you ice cream. So dad comes and says, look, maybe, he's a good kid anyway, whatever. Maybe he'll say you didn't even have ice cream if you don't give him ice cream. Okay, I'll give him ice cream. But here that doesn't happen. Well, Hashem says, I've forgiven you, and the main point, which is take them into Israel, doesn't happen. Itaka doesn't wipe them out, but he doesn't take them into Israel either. So the Rebbe says, look, let's understand from the perspective of Hashem what's going on here. Paragraph 9. Explanation as follows. The fact that Hashem says that the generation of the desert can't go into Israel is not a punitive punishment. It's not, you touch my toys, I'm going to do something to you. It's a direct result. It's not a punitive. It's not. You understand? It's not punitive. It's corrective. Or in this case, it's just an automatic result. It's a totsa'ativit. It's a natural. What do we call it? Not a circumstance. Natural repercussion, consequence. It's a natural consequence that is born from what you did. Why? Because what did the spies say about Eretz Yisrael? They spoke about the might of the people that live in the land. It was true. They didn't lie. That was the thing. They didn't lie. They gave the truth. To conquer Israel would be impossible, naturally. So how are they going to go into Israel? Basically, what was God planning? God was planning to bring them into Israel through them being faithful and trusting in Hashem and in Hashem's miracles. Even though it's true, the spies gave an accurate report that the dwellers of the land are strong, but Hashem's even stronger. He makes miracles. What are you worried about? As Rashi brings what Kalev said, Kalev, when he wanted to get everybody quiet, he made it sound like he's going to attack Moshe as well. But in the end, he says, hey, you guys are doubting the strength of Moshe. You're doubting the strength of Hashem through his prophet Moshe. He split the sea for us. He brought out the man for us. He brought down the quail for us. We're going to go, Alon Na'aleh, we're going to go up and conquer Israel. Even if it's in heaven. And he tells us, build ladders to the heaven, we'll do it as well. So this is what Hashem is saying to Moshe. Hashem is saying, Ad anna lo ya'aminu bi. Till what extent will they continue not to believe in me, even with all the miracles I've done with them? I'm just going to have to get rid of them. In other words, since they're non-believers, I can't fulfill my mission through them. I haven't worked out. I set up all these miracles for them. So now they're going to walk triumphantly into Israel, and my miracles are going to keep streaming through them. And they disabled the Wi-Fi. They took out the battery. They unplugged themselves. There's no, we can't. What am I supposed to do? If you can't, move out of the way. I'll find somebody who can. It's not a punishment. It's just they unplugged. You have to go and you have to be plugged into Hashem. The miracles have to keep running. And they show that they're not going. They're not part of the program. They're not a keli. They're not a vehicle and a vessel to this kind of hanagan nisit, to the kind of miraculous behavior that I was planning to bring them into Israel with. If they want to go in a natural way, sorry, I can't. I might as well just finish them up here. That's naturally, they've reached a dead end naturally. It's true. What the spy said is true. If you want to look only from a military standpoint, the nations are stronger. You may as well just give up. And if you're not going to believe in God, you're not going to be the vehicle for my vision, says Hashem. And that's similar to what we said in the portion of B'chukaisai. It says, if you're going to go with me in a way of temporariness, not really connected with me, I will also allow you to fall into happenstance. If you want to go with me as if things are, carry means things are coincidental, I'll allow you to be a victim of coincidence. If you insist on being in the laws of nature, you know what's going to happen? The laws of nature. And if you take away God's protection and you rely on nature, it's a problem because you're not going to be able to get into the land of Israel. You're right. And therefore, what's going to happen? Not I'm going to punish you. Automatically, you're going to be wiped out because you just naturally you really can't go into Israel. So we'll get we'll stop at the paragraph here last. But that's what Moshe Rabbeinu asks. What does Moshe Rabbeinu answer Hashem? The Egyptians will hear, they'll say that Hashem didn't have the power. What are you saying, Hashem? You're saying I'll wipe them out. Why? Because they didn't believe in me. If you kill them all, you know what that's going to do for the belief in God in the whole world? Not just the Jewish people. You say they didn't believe in you. If you kill them, the whole world's not going to believe in you. They're going to say, the Canaan will say, God, he can't do it. That's why he killed them. So if you're angry with them, if you're trying to promote your agenda, you're saying they're not going with my agenda. Moshe Rabbeinu comes and says, follow through with that thought. Your agenda is going to be even more harmed if you kill them, because then the guy is going to say, you're unable. So that's why Moshe jumps to that line of thought, because that's what Hashem is saying. And that's why when Hashem says, no, I'm going to forgive them, salachti, I'll forgive them like you've said. And Rashi says, what does that mean? Because of what you said, that the goyim will say, I'm not able, I'm going to forgive them. But what the forgiveness can do is only take away the punishment. It takes away the sin and the punishment that Hashem says, okay, I'm not going to do what I said, kill them all in one shot. But still, that doesn't make them the right vehicle to be able to go into Eretz Yisrael. No, I can take away my anger at them for not trusting in me, but they're still not plugged in to my supernatural powers that will allow them to go into Israel. So now we're saying they're not being punished not to go into Israel. But simply, if they're in the state where they're not trusting me, even after I did all the miracles for them, so what does it mean? It means that they're going to have to go in a natural way, because in order to be a vehicle for miracles, you have to be open to the miracles. If you've disabled your Wi-Fi, you can't receive miracles, and you're going to have to go in a natural way, this generation is not going to be able to do it. Forget about it. You guys are natural. I'll keep you in the desert. I'm not going to kill you. But you're just not able to go into Israel because you're not open. You've proven that you're not open. So many times I did miracles, and still you don't trust in me. So how am I going to take you into going into Israel needs to be done miraculously.
Thinking about the thing of the fire, he asked them direct what to.
And they gave answers.
What to fire? He didn't say just he said.
And they answered. The sin was that they said we can't. That was the simple thing. Is they weren't asked for a prognosis. They weren't asked for a conclusion. They were asked just for what you call. But the point is that what they said about the land being very strong, they were right.
Like showing the big wall and passed by truck. This is what,
But that's what Hashem was expecting of them. And if they lost their trust after so much that He's done for them, forget about it. That's what confused them. There's other sikhs where the Rebbe says what threw them off is that
because the thing is, God can't
it
check
seems like,
everything, not like a check only.
in other words,
the first,
it seems
the first stage.
it seems that it has to be. It seems that Hashem wants it to be natural. That's why they said we can't do it. But that's another another nuance. Here, what we're saying is that the fact that they didn't. The simple story is they didn't believe. They started crying. If you don't believe, you're not. It's not a punishment anymore. What Moshe said, I forgive you. Okay, Moshe has a good point. But you guys aren't the guys. Put you on the side. We'll let you die off naturally, and then the next generation will go in. According to this, we'll understand why Rashi needs to insist, paragraph 10, that Vayinasu means challenging Hashem. Even though it may look from the context that it says you challenged me and you didn't listen to me, it may look like it's a sin. He's saying, no, the problem here is all about the skepticism, the challenging of Hashem. It's the lack, it's the weakness of the faith of Hashem, of this generation of the desert, which becomes the reason why they can't go into Israel. Now we'll understand why Rashi chooses which are the sins, which are the challenges, not the sins, which really irk Hashem and say, you guys are not the vehicle, the vessel, to the kind of faith you need to be able to have the miracles of being victorious of Israel. What is he? Which sins are they? Which angers are they? He says in Masechta Erkin, if you look at the thread of all those challenges, you see how in all of them there was a lack of faith. And that's why they couldn't have the faith to go into Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't take away. They've proven they don't have a strong faith. So whatever Moshe said didn't help. That Hashem should be convinced that they can go into Israel. Yes, he can. Hashem cannot be angry at them anymore, which Moshe Rabbeinu achieved. Salachti, I forgave them, but they've proven that they're fickle in terms of their faith. What do we mean? Paragraph 11. The explanation is like this. In the previous, in an earlier verse, it says that Hashem said, till what stage, to what extent, till when will they not believe in me? Here, however, it doesn't say that they didn't believe in me. Here says, they will not see the land. He says, because all the people that have seen my glory, seen my miracles, which I did in Egypt, which I did in the thing, and they challenged me, say they didn't trust them, they didn't believe in me, they challenged me. So Rashi says, what's the sin of challenging Hashem? In a way, it's much more severe than not believing in Hashem. Why? This then becomes the reason that even after Hashem forgives the Jews, they can't go into Israel. Why is it so bad to challenge Hashem when you believe in Him? You can only challenge. You don't believe in Hashem, you don't believe in Him. But there's something worse when you challenge Him, even though you do believe in Him. Why? When it says that when Hashem sent Moshe to the Jewish people initially, what did Moshe Rabbeinu predict about the Jewish people? He says, what happens if they don't believe me? Yeah. So then what can Hashem do? He says, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Hashem says, here, I'm giving you a few miracles in your eyes. Im lo yaminu bi, but if they don't trust me after the first test, after the first miracle, Moshe, you have another thing. And if they didn't listen to the first two, by the time you come to the third one, they'll listen to you. If they didn't listen to the first one, they'll listen to the last one. In other words, if somebody's not believing in Hashem, make him a bigger miracle, he'll stop believing. But here's a problem. Here we're talking about people that saw Hashem's glory and miracles that He did in Egypt, did in the desert. They understand it's Hashem. There's no question. They believe. They saw the manna coming down. They saw the sea being split. They saw the plagues. They believed. They saw it. They didn't have to believe it. They saw it. And yet, they challenge Hashem 10 times. To the extent that they don't want to listen to my instruction. So what's it going to help if I show them bigger miracles? They're going to challenge me again. Let's see. So well, there's a very, very severe, there's a very severe sin here in these 10 things where Hashem has shown himself, and yet even as Hashem is showing himself, they're walking around skeptic. Why? What are the 10 things? Let's understand. So Rashi brings paragraph 12. This way of challenging Hashem is in the 3 kinds of tests that Rashi brings. Because each of the tests, each of the challenges Rashi brings has a something with its opposite. In other words, the fact that they see Hashem and yet they're skeptical, they challenge Hashem. Let's look first at the sea. Okay. The second, let's go to the second complaint at the sea. Then we'll talk about the first one. That's in the footnote. The second complaint is, what was that complaint? The sea split. The unbelievable happens. They walk through the raging sea waters with the sea piled up at the side. They walk through dry land. They come out. They've seen God. You can't see God more than that. What did they then say? Maybe the Egyptians also came out the other side. Hello, are you guys off your rocker? It's not. Yeah, the Talmud, the Erkin, the tractate Erkin says that was one of the sins. Even if you want to talk about the sin when they get to the sea, the Rabbi points in a footnote, they cry out to Hashem there because they've seen what he did in Egypt. They knew he can. They've seen him. They've seen his hand. Why are you being skeptical about him now? Okay, that's in the sea. Let's go to the man. Okay, they get this heavenly bread. There's incredible things. Never happened before, never happened after. These little seeds. You eat them, taste whatever you want. It's godly food. What does Hashem say? Guys, don't go out on the Shabbos and don't leave over till tomorrow. What do? All of a sudden they're skeptical. Understand? Hashem creates something new that never was. Godly food. By the way, you know that there's an opinion that the bracha that was made was Amotzi lechem min hashamayim. God brings food from heaven. And what are they saying? Oh, yeah, it's delicious food, but will we have enough for tomorrow? God said you will. So they see Hashem and they're skeptical of Hashem at the same time, right? And on Shabbos, they go out to see, maybe they're going to get some on Shabbos. Hashem, like, you guys, you're off the rocker. Similarly by the Slav, in 1 second, similarly by this quail, the fact that the Jews, what do the Jews ask? Who can give us meat? 1 second. You got bread from heaven. You think it's a problem for God to bring bird? I mean, that's a new creation. You think it's a problem for God to bring a couple of birds, a couple of meats? By the way, according to Rashi, Hashem brought every day quail. Nonetheless, later on, they want more. They want more meat, and again, they have a skepticism. They have a doubt. So, and they say, who can give us meat? Hello, God's been showing you. He gives you one kind of meat. You need another kind of meat, you'll get it also. In other words, you think that Hashem can't give you extra meat. You want more meat. Like, come on. You guys, you see the miracles, and you're skeptical at the same time. That's not proper. However, the other nisyanis, the other challenges, for example, the two at water, and the sin of the golden calf, and the sin of the spies, you didn't have that oxymoron. You didn't have those two opposite things at the same time, seeing Hashem and doubting Hashem in the same thing. And that's why Rashi doesn't bring them in an explicit way, because what Rashi brings.
The chapter that he really speak about review.
Okay, so now let's see. You wanted to say something? Correct. But that's another question. Why is it attributed to the entire nation? It was only a few that sinned. Yeah, because we got pulled into into what it's a reflection. It's a reflection on the society. Some people actually did it, but some people maybe it was there in this more subtle way. So now let's bring this home. Oh wow, is this wait, when you see this? Paragraph 13. One of the teachings here, says the Rebbe, in serving Hashem, we need to remember how much we have to be careful and attentive that the miracles that Hashem shows us in an individual way and in a communal way should affect us with an intensity, with a strength, and in a practical way, and should be embedded within us. Because if we say, if in the generation of the desert, there could be this kind of reality where they had these open and blatant miracles, and yet they challenge Hashem 10 times, although they're seeing the miraculous things, how much more so us, who live in this time of darkness at the heels of Mashiach, right at the end of times. We have to, Rabbi uses the interesting language there, daf min ton und ton. We have to do and do. You know, you have to work at it till you're sure that you have mitigated, you've taken away the danger of falling into this kind of doubting, even after he shows you his hand. So through the fact that everybody will misbainen, everybody will meditate, contemplate on the things that Hashem has done to him, things that Hashem has done for the Jewish community in general, the Jewish people, and with every person individually, a contemplation in a way that truly consumes him. This is a preparation that we should be able to go into Israel now, into Eretz Yisrael, to Mashiach, with a complete redemption. Redemption doesn't have any exile afterwards. As the Pasuk says, the same way I took you out of Egypt, that going out of Egypt was in a way of miracles. Similarly, Hashem says, I will show you wonders also in this time when Hashem takes you to Mashiach. So I think, first of all, now we're living in times where we witness, with all the challenge, with all the danger, with all the tragedy we witness in Israel, we've also seen some things that are absolutely incredulous. It's so incredulous. We haven't, I think many of us haven't really digested it. The Iranian bombs, the missile projectiles and so on. But there's also something personal. Most of us have things in our lives that the Hashem does incredible things. And yet, we're skeptical. You just saw Hashem doing it. Why are you worried now? Why do you think he can't do this next time? Because it needs supernatural. Okay, you saw what he did till now. Don't give up. Just continue. You want to be a vehicle for Hashem to transmit through you. You have to stay connected to him and you have to be faithful. But the worst is when you actually see Hashem's providence, and then at the same time, you imagine somebody's blessed, he sees Hashem blesses him with this and with that, and then he decides, yeah, but maybe if I don't go and do this, I'm not. Point taken, I think. To trust in Hashem and let Hashem will be our provider. Hashem should take us into Holy Land, Mashiach.